So welcome everyone to the first speaker series for the 2023-2024 year. Nancy Broersch, thank you so much for doing this again. Last year was fantastic, and this year looks like it's going to be another great year. Good. Okay, so our agenda is very, very simple. I've done the welcome. We're going to do our land acknowledgement, our idea statement, our club collect. Leigh will talk for about half an hour. We'll have a question period, and then we'll adjourn. Okay? So, Jocelyn, if you would read the land acknowledgement for us.
Thank you. In the spirit of truth and reconciliation, BPW Ontario members acknowledge that we gather on traditional lands of Haudenosaunee, the Ojibwe Chippewa, the Anishinaabeg, the Anishinaabeg, the Attawandaron, Wendat, Huron-Wendat, Mississaugas of the New Credit, Atikamengsing, Anishinaabeg, Métis, and Inuit peoples. We are grateful for the opportunity to work with Indigenous peoples who continue to live in these lands to create a safer and more abundant future for all women and girls.
Thank you. So our idea statement. BPW Ontario welcomes all people who identify as women, regardless of race, religion, age, nationality, citizenship, geographic location, ability, marital status, socioeconomic status, education, sexual orientation, or gender identity, and is committed to providing an inclusive, welcoming, empowering environment for all members. Just a start. There we go. Nancy, do you want to read the club collect?
Sure. All right. May we see beyond pettiness, fault finding, and all forms of prejudice. Let us meet each other face to face with honesty, patience, and generosity of spirit. May we go forward unafraid, confidently putting into action plans that are carefully considered and adequately debated. May we depart with the knowledge that through BPW and our collective energies, we can impact upon the greater good more than can be realized alone. And may we have the strength to abide by our convictions, the reward of sharing our burdens, and the joy of success in all we do.
Thank you.
There's a spelling mistake there, by the way.
Is there? Oh,
yeah.
Okay, I'll look at it.
Yeah.
Okay. So our guest speaker today is Leigh Beauchamp Day. Originally from Fort Erie, Ontario, Leigh Beauchamp Day lived in rural Quebec, Calgary, Vancouver, and then Ottawa. She now lives in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Lucky lady. Leigh left school at the grade 11 level. At 24, she entered Carleton University, completing a double major in psychology with a focus on neuropsych and comparative religion with a focus on Eastern religion and philosophy. That is heavy duty. That is amazing. Leigh then incorporated the Aurora Lancaster Corporation, which had marketing research contracts in Supply and Services Canada and Communications Canada. In 1982, Leigh was co-owner and president of Atlantic Access Limited, a small company in Halifax, providing design and analysis software for engineers. Technology moved forward, and in 1983, Leigh was invited to be the industry liaison and communications manager for the new industry-oriented Nova Scotia CAD/CAM Center at the then Technical University of Nova Scotia. During her time there, Leigh founded Entrepreneurs Forum, was executive director for 2 years, eventually served as president of the board. When TUNS was incorporated into Dalhousie University, Leigh was asked to become the Faculty of Engineering Communications Manager. It was during this time she learned of Edna May Best Sexton, and a whole new journey began. Leigh retired in 2009. In 2014, Engineers Nova Scotia nominated her as an honorary fellow of Engineers Canada. Leigh continues to write articles for Engineers Nova Scotia. In 2010, she founded the May Best Sexton Fund for Dalhousie Women in Engineering at Dalhousie University and is co-steward with the Dean of Engineering. Tonight, Leigh will give us a short overview of Entrepreneurs Forum and introduce us to Edna May Best Sexton, orator, scientist, philanthropist, who had mysteriously, and my screen is disappearing here, disappeared from history for 82 years. This is so exciting. I am so looking forward to hearing this. Welcome, Leigh. And now I'm going to let you take it away. I will stop sharing my screen and we will see you. And when you're ready to start sharing, you go ahead.
Okay, when I'm ready to start sharing, Matthew is going to go ahead. Okay, thank you, Anne, and good evening, everyone in BPW Niagara. And thank you for inviting me to speak this evening. It was quite a surprise to me to learn that you've been in existence, at least as BPW Canada, since 1930. When I was invited to speak, I thought that you were a much newer organization, so bravo. I was intrigued to see that BPW began 1 year after the historic 1929 decision to include women in the legal definition of persons. So that was kind of cool. And that Elsie McGill, Matthew, we get a picture of Elsie up here. We'll try to be, we have to do this every time? Oh, good. Where's Elsie? Oh, this, I just press this. You press it. Once we get this going, you'll see Elsie. I'm sure we're not seeing Elsie. That's not it. There's You're seeing Elsie?
Yeah.
Full screen. Good. Okay. So Elsie, we'll leave it there for a while. Elsie was the first woman in Canada to earn an engineering degree in 1927 from the University of Toronto. And she was president of BPW, as you guys already know, from 1962 to 1964. So I thought that was cool to discover that. And you were here in 1965 when I entered the workforce and could have used your support and guidance. So that being said, I'm happy to and thankful to make your acquaintance this evening. For the first topic, Entrepreneurs Forum, my hands-on involvement began from the beginning to about year 8 of the 25 years. Although I'm not an engineer, I worked with many engineers for over 30 years and eventually married one. That had to happen. Being a man's world and not an engineer had its rewards and challenges. Being at the forefront of technology and innovation was very exciting. So is this technology exciting? A bit of info on women in engineering, just in case you don't know a lot about women in engineering. I watched from the sidelines as more women entered engineering studies and the profession. And I remember being alerted by our secretary that Maureen Palmater, the first female master's student at Ton Civil Engineering, was coming to the director's office for a meeting. Later, Maureen laughed when I told her why we'd all been standing there silent and in awe as she walked in. But it was 1983, and given that the IBM PC had just been introduced in 1981, that was really kind of cool to see a woman in that context. So the Women in Engineering Committee, a support and outreach group within Engineers Nova Scotia, our provincial licensing body for engineers, was established in 2014. So that's still very late compared to you guys. Women in engineering had basically been going it on their own in some pretty challenging territory. The first woman to be president of Engineers Nova Scotia was Lucy Canary in 1999. That was huge. Next wasn't until 2013. And then after that, they've been alternating almost every second year. So that's a good balance, and we're happy to see that. Engineers Canada is working toward the goal of 30% licensed female engineers by 2030. So that's their 30-30 program. And I think they're about the 19% stage now. At Dalhousie Engineering, the percentage of women entering engineering this year is 24%. So that's well up from the -1% of 1983. The Dalhousie University Women in Engineering Society is a student-led support and outreach organization, and it was only established in 2019. So when I was working, none of this was there. As you see, women in engineering profession is a comparatively new phenomenon. A mere 147 years ago, the first woman engineer in North America, Elizabeth Bragg, graduated from Berkeley University in 1876, Trust, California. I had enough research to give you a rip-roaring history of women in engineering, but you'll be so pleased to know that's not going to happen. But I do want to share this quote from Edith Clark. My goodness. Edith Clark, the inventor of the graphic calculator, just a second, there you go. The inventor of the graphic calculator was MIT's first electrical engineering graduate in 1919. And she said, there's no demand for women engineers as such as there are for women doctors, but there's always a good demand for anyone who can do a good piece of work. So thought you'd like that. Okay. Are we back to me now, Matthew?
Sure.
We're still, okay. So, all right. So anyway, Entrepreneurs Forum. In 1991, I was part of a group of about 10 taken to Boston by Industry Canada to visit academic organizations, labs, and companies to see if we could bring back business ventures or research opportunities. One of the speakers was an MIT faculty member who spoke about a program they had recently introduced called Enterprise Forum. Students and graduates with startup technical businesses went in front of about 125 financial, marketing, and human resource personnel. They presented their business plan, hoping that somebody in the audience would give them useful guidance or money, preferably. It was a pre-Dragon's Den scenario. MIT began this program to address their then current problem of budding entrepreneurs with phenomenal technical backgrounds and great ideas for companies, but no business experience or background. So meanwhile, in Nova Scotia, for about 10 years, we had been promoting the use of computer-aided design and manufacturing technology within both the faculty and in industry. And Nova Scotia was in exactly the same situation by this time. New technology-based companies were in dire need of business mentoring. So I invited the MIT speaker to come to Halifax, which he did, and to present the Entrepreneurs Forum idea to the outreach organization that we operated through the center, and of which I was the volunteer executive director. Then, to Nova Scotianize the idea, I proposed 8 business professionals, roughly, chosen specifically for each entrepreneur. The presentation would follow a private get acquaintance dinner, and after which the business plan and hopefully 1 or 2 of the advisors would volunteer to mentor the company. So the person to chair this group had to be from industry. A wonderful industry consultant, David Lyons, agreed to volunteer his time and expertise for 2 years, and he and I selected a small organizing group. For each event, 2 within the group would find an entrepreneur, get them prepared, choose the industry participants, 1 or 2 of whom would sponsor the cost of the dinner, and make all of the arrangements. As this was all volunteer-based, we could only hold 6 a year, and that was not nearly enough. After 2 years and having assisted 12 companies, our track record enabled us to apply for funding from the local National Research Council and hire our first of 4 paid executive directors. The first 3 were exceptional women. The last one was an exceptional man. Each one grew the organization, keeping the same presentation format. At about the 6 years into the program, Entrepreneurs Forum was receiving funding from industry as well as government, and we had to incorporate. By this time, I was president of the umbrella organization, and the government money flowed through it to the program. If we wanted to start a fresh organization to incorporate, we had to lose $100,000 or so that we had in the bank for salaries and operating costs. So we did the obvious, which was not painless, believe me. We changed the name from the overall organization to Entrepreneurs Forum. So that solved that one. We went forward from there with money and all. Not everybody wanted to do this, so it was a little tricky to do. The dinners eventually became roll up your sleeve sandwich and coffee events, and were every bit, if not more, successful. After serving my time as president and past president and guiding the organization to the 8-year point, I was given my Atta Girl plaque and happily became the grand old lady who for the remaining 17 years would be asked to take a bow at the annual AGM and industry showcase and participate as an event advisor from time to time. So that was fun and rewarding. You will now see, I believe, our next picture. Here we are. Okay, there we are. No, I can't see the picture, but anyway, this picture, it was taken of our board at that time. There's some pretty heavy hitters there. The woman in the very center in the blue was the lady who actually led the expedition to Boston. There's an Industry Canada person, a VP with the TD Bank, a lawyer. It was an accountant. It was a pretty heavy hitting group. The woman in the front, like I'm the person with hair up with the pink blouse. The other lady is Tanya Shaw, and she was one of our entrepreneurs, and she led the development of the computer-generated patterns for clothing. That was and she was the feature employer or entrepreneur for this photo. By the end of the 25 years, the organization had assisted close to 300 entrepreneurs in, I believe, all or most of the Atlantic provinces. Okay, you do it, ma'am. Then tragedy struck. The executive director passed away very suddenly. Within a few months, the board closed the Entrepreneurs Forum for good. It had fulfilled its mandate, and they were going on to other things. Now, when I Googled Entrepreneurs Forum, each link was very vague about how it started. Inspired by MIT was the catchword. Okay. Matthew's mentioning, and I don't see anything. Oh, she wants me to go louder. Anyway, it was a catchword. One sees it miraculously appearing out of the Atlantic fog. I always look back on my part of this story with a bit of pride, hopefully not too much hubris, and gratefulness for all of the people who contributed to its success. And thank you for allowing me to share the story here. If there was something within that part that anybody from BPW can use, that would be super. Edna May Best Sexton, who went by May. We're now going to fast forward to 2005 in March. I was at my communications manager desk, minding my own business, juggling priorities. You've all been there. And my phone rang. Of course, I answered it. It was everything is the then these days, Nova Scotia Advisory Council on the Status of Women, now called the Women and Gender Equality Canada. They wanted a photo of Edna May Best Sexton, as they had just named her one of the four mothers of Nova Scotia. I said, okay, you must mean Anne Sexton, because that was the only wife I ever knew Fred Sexton had. They assured me, no, it was Edna May, his first wife. So briefly for context, we're going to just go to Fred Sexton. Whoops. Fred Sexton, that's him. Okay, he's now on your screen. Okay. Fred was the founder and the first president of the Nova Scotia Technical College, and now is the faculty of the Faculty of Engineering. He also founded the Technical Institute, which is now the Nova Scotia Community College. He did all this as a young married man and engineering professor from the age of 26 to 29. The first class of 10 from the college graduated in 1910. Frederick Pat presided over both organizations over 40 years. When he retired, forget the attaboy plaque, the faculty bought him a car. May was obviously a powerful woman in her own right. I asked around, and no one had heard of her except for Alan Marble, an engineer and historian. He was able to provide some information and also told me that all of her papers, photos, and memorabilia were destroyed in a fire. And then in lower tones, he said, there were rumors, but nobody was sure. So Dr. Marble gave me historian contacts at McGill, University of New Brunswick, and Acadia University. Each had a bit more information about her life, but had the hushed tone of the fire story. After much searching, one photo was found. Okay, it was in a book about, no, that's the house. There. This is not, okay, before her. We're going backwards. There we go. Yeah, it was in a book about famous Nova Scotians, which had a bit more information. No fire story, and was easily, it was heavily pixelated, as you can see. So I hired a graphic artist to fill in the pixels so that it would look like a photo. There we go. So, and I sent that to the inquiring organization. Horrified that she'd been so forgotten, I wrote an article for the faculty magazine. And briefly, and this will be while May's picture's up there, May was born in Shediac, New Brunswick. Both parents died young at about 12 years of age. She was sent to Boston to be raised by relatives. All accounts describe her as having striking intelligence. In 1902, she graduated from MIT with high honors in chemistry, after which she worked at General Electric as a researcher. Several women scientists at the time worked at General Electric, so there seems to have been a bit of a support group going on there. In 1904, she married MIT grad Fred Sexton and moved with him to Halifax when he accepted a Dalhousie professorship post. May had too much energy to be a regular professor's wife, and she wanted to contribute to the improvement of life in a new province. So, with Frederick's full support, she joined the local Women's Council, which focused on a better lives for Haligonians, some of which those lives were in dire shape at that time, the Ladies' Music Club, and eventually the Imperial Order of the Daughters of the Empire, and the Red Cross. That was mainly in the war years. May held significant posts in all of these organizations, along with being one of the heavy-duty workers. Meanwhile, she had two children. Son Whitney was born in 1906 and Helen in 1908. They had a home, which you've seen a group. There we are, a home. They had a home built on campus grounds, so at least commuting time was eliminated. Recognized as a born leader, May was described as an efficient project manager, articulate, and able to make engaging presentations to community groups and government. She wrote columns in the newspaper as well. Her pre-war projects included improved hospital and mental health care, safe playgrounds, the inclusion of food preparation and nutrition in school curriculums, read that, home economics, the enfranchisement of women, the vote, and their right to serve on school boards, which had only been men to this time. Her most passionate preoccupation was the training of technical training for women. The new industrial school was men only, as was the engineering college. May advocated for an industrial school for girls. She wrote, "They have no trade, no resource, and no chance to learn trade, as boys have." She was also concerned with the factory safety, as women were coming into jobs usually held by men, and some of them were quite dangerous, and they had no training. May's presentation to the Nova Scotia legislature was made in 1908. The same year, their daughter was born, interestingly. It was turned down. It was not until 1958 that Norma Eddy was the first woman to obtain a degree in engineering in Nova Scotia, but we all know that through the war years, many women were trained and in various occupations in factories. The war years were approaching. May turned more of her energy to rustling support in various crises, Titanic victims, Halifax explosion, influenza epidemic. When the war came along, she organized medical and food supplies and a library for the Veterans Camp Hill Hospital. May also went on a province-wide fundraising expedition for the Red Cross, raising over $1 million for the war effort, 30 million in today's dollars. Her favorite saying is that she would rather rust out than wear out. By 1918, her health failed, and she and Frederick were able to take a few European vacations. Although May never recovered, she was rarely seen in public, and citizens came to their home for her advice and counseling. May died of uremic failure, kidney failure, basically, in December of 1923 at 43 years of age, leaving a son about to go into university and a daughter in grade school. The local newspaper published an editorial along with her obituary, plus a lengthy description of her funeral. The lieutenant governor, the premier, the mayor, several dignitaries led the cortege to Camp Hill Cemetery, and her tombstone, which we will now see, there we go, has a fabulous inscription, yet she was lost to history for 82 years. I need to see that inscription now. Darn it. Scientist, orator, and philanthropist. So that's quite a woman to be lost for that length of time. After the 2005 article, all was quiet until early 2010, when an email arrived from historian and author Myrna Forster. Myrna had written one book, The 100 Canadian Heroines, and of course she received a pile of emails telling her of the 100 she had forgotten. Myrna was now writing her second book, The 100 War Canadian Heroines. She had 5 women to add in 3 spaces, and May was one of the 5. But Myrna couldn't add May unless she had access to a record, any form of something May had actually said or written. It couldn't be just cited. It had to be, she had to see it. So as Myrna lived in Victoria, BC, she asked me if I could do some digging. Fortunately, I then learned of Lois York, who was the director of the Public Archives of Nova Scotia at that time. Lois took me under her wing and showed me the article that she had written in 2005, which we shall now see. There we go. We're getting the hang of this. In which May was the same year, interestingly enough, when May was named a foremother. So I could have gone to her for a lot of information, but didn't know that at the time. Lois also gave me her file of research to copy and share with Myrna, and set me up in the microfiche room to go through every Chronicle Herald issue from the time May was actively submitting articles. That was the only way we had of getting May's firsthand voice. Dr. Marble then gave me the telephone number for May's only granddaughter, Sandra Wassel, who lived in Arizona. There's Sandra with May's great-granddaughter, Danielle Wassel. This was the beginning of a friendship that would last many years, but Sandra knew virtually nothing of her grandmother, but she did know who set that fire. Sandra knew her grandfather, Fred, very well. You'll now see him, there we go, as they had enjoyed many visits, but the subject of May was never raised because, one, she was very young, and secondly, mentioning her first wife was just not done in those days. When Sandra did ask her father about her mother, she said he became very quiet and said, and all he could say was that on the day she died was the worst day of his life. So she never asked him another question. Sandra never knew what a great woman her grandmother had been until all this research started being done. And I started sharing it with her, and she was sharing it with her daughter and son and granddaughter. When Fred passed in January 1995, his wife Anne, wanting to do the right thing, sent all of the boxes of personal papers to both Frederick and May to Whitney, as Helen had died in 1953. Helen had been a second in command at the U.S. Embassy in India. So both kids did very well. He was actually a very successful petroleum engineer, but he didn't have really great success with wives, as we'll see. and felt that Whitney would like to decide if and what to bequeath to university libraries. It seems that nobody ever opened those boxes. A few years later, when Whitney passed, Sandra said that there was a terrific 3-day, all-day bonfire in which everything he owned was reduced to ashes, including the personal papers of Frederick and May. This was a tremendous loss to Sandra and to her family, as well as to Canadian history. May was included in Myrna's book, Yay, which is they're both available through Amazon. And what are we trying to do here? Oh, here, there we go. During one of our conversations, I mentioned to Myrna that I thought of setting up a scholarship in May's name to honor that her story, to ensure that her story would have yet another way to endure and inspire others. Myrna said, Leigh, I have 1 month before my manuscript will go into the final edit. If you can put this together, it will go in the book. So done. And there you go. The scholarship was set up and the scholarship was set up, and the link in the book still works after 12 years, which is interesting to know. In 2010, which is when this happened, there were at least 3 to 5 female engineering students per year who would qualify. The young lady who posed for the flyer was Laura Payne, who is a petroleum engineer in Calgary now. They had to demonstrate high academic achievement and community involvement, the same values May demonstrated in her own life. But to be given out, the fund had to reach $10,000. Over a 7-year period, I was able to raise a little over $6,500. Engineers Nova Scotia were very generous, as were a few engineering companies, plus several colleges or colleagues, friends, and relatives. A few things happened in my life that halted fundraising activity, even though there were offers to help. It was just one of those couple of years. But then, fast forward to 2021, Dean of Engineering, John Newhook, topped up the fund to the full amount needed. He also updated me that today there were so many women who would qualify that he would have a very difficult time designating a recipient. Meanwhile, the Women in Engineering Society that I was talking about earlier had a vigorous high school, junior high and high school outreach program and several other initiatives. The whole membership embodied May's values. There were also annual WIE conferences across the country from which these students returned, all fired up with new ideas, the kind of fire we like. His proposal was to designate the funds to the Society's annual budget for these activities. I thought that was totally brilliant. I was delighted. John and I had worked for many years on projects since he was a master's student. So his creative vision and support for women in engineering did not come as a surprise, but it did come as a tremendous gift. Dalhousie Advancement celebrated this by publishing an article, and you can Google this article, by, sorry, Matthew, there, by Emma Sutro. And Emma retold May's story and how the fund came into being. All was quiet for a year. And then an email came in from this lovely lady. I'll get her up here in a second. Yes. There you go. Ellen McIntyre. Ellen works with Lockheed Martin Canada's engineering and technology team as manager of employee leadership development. She is also a passionate and active supporter of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, STEM, which promotes education and careers in these areas to young women. Ellen had heard of knew of the Great Women Portrait Project, founded by former journalist and now artist Jo Napier. And while researching various women to choose the one that she wanted to sponsor for a portrait, Ellen came across Emma Sutro's article. When Ellen invited me for coffee, I thought it was just to ask for a contribution toward the $1,000 required to fund the painting. When she told me that she had already paid that amount out of her own pocket, and all she needed from me was more information about May for the story that would go with the painting, I seriously had to retreat to a corner of the cafe until I stopped crying and pulled myself together. Wow, I was overwhelmed by this. The Great Women's Project began as a result of Jo Napier talking to her daughter about inspiring women and realizing that many were written about in books, but few portraits were available in public places. You can see here that Jo is sort of joy in a bottle. She's a very enthusiastic young lady. Her first client was the Royal Bank, who bought a number of her portraits for their boardroom. Jo then went out to women in various industries, professions, etc., to ask if there were women who they thought should have their portrait and story represented in the project and on the wall in their office, boardroom, or lobby. This response was wonderful. Jo sums up her project with these words. Very good. Women of today, discovering women of yesterday, and inspiring women of tomorrow. Jo says, when a girl closes her eyes to imagine a pioneer or a scientist and inventor, I'd like her to see a female face. Statues, history books, and portraits on our walls feature a higher proportion of men. Jo would like men, women, boys, and girls to be more aware of that hidden half of history, the female half, and highlight the powerful paths that women have paved, particularly in traditionally male-dominated fields. Her belief is that when we plug that awareness into our consciousness and into the consciousness of the next generation, we're a lot more likely to get all of our talent at the table, particularly in the STEM fields. A few weeks ago, Jo held a private showing of the portraits done to date. Many had to be borrowed from boardroom and lobby walls for the occasion, and May's portrait was among them. And here we see Ellen and Jo with May's portrait. Thanks to the foresight and generosity of Ellen McIntyre and the vision and artistry of Jo Napier, 100 years after her early death, May took her place among the great women of the past. There we are, and there she is. The great women of the past. And this was 100 years after her early death. I might not have mentioned that. And women of the past who are the inspiration of the women today and future generations. For Entrepreneurs Forum, we can go back to me now, Matthew. Might take a while to get to me, maybe not. Okay, there we go. Yeah, for Entrepreneurs Forum and Edna Best Sexton, I am truly grateful for the many men and women who have worked in the foreground and in the background over the past years to make everything you heard about in both of those projects happen. Thank you, BPW Ontario and Niagara, for having me as your guest speaker this evening. I really appreciate it. And I turn it over to you now, I guess.
Thank you so much. That was so interesting. It's unbelievable that she got lost for so long. Yes. Does anyone have any questions?
Oh, questions.
I'm just kind of overwhelmed with the information, first of all, and your participation, Leigh. It's so nice to be connected to you. Such brilliance and capabilities, and wow, just mind-blowing. I'm really impressed. I knew you were a smart cookie before, but now I'm really impressed.
Now you know I've got a smart son too.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. No, it was amazing. Truly amazing. I really enjoyed the presentation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm so glad
Jocelyn,
we could do this.
I have one comment because it really struck me when you said that she said rest out rather than wear out. Oh my goodness, what a message that I needed to hear this evening. And all of us need to hear this. We tend to overwork ourselves so much.
That's true.
So thank you for this message.
You're very
Haven't I said that, Jocelyn, many times, saying I'd rather wear out than rust out? And my mother used to say the same
Oh
thing.
my goodness.
Wow.
Yeah. No, amazing. Really
So
amazing.
something good came out of this. This is wonderful.
Yes. Yes. It's funny that she wasn't a BPW member as well.
Yeah.
Yes. So there's no other questions from anybody? I don't see anything. Your talk was very thorough. It was so interesting. So that's probably why there's no questions, because it was so well presented. Very, very well done.
Thank you so very, very much. I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see what this thing looks like up on YouTube when it goes there.
I will get it up as soon as possible.
Can I make a comment?
Oh, please.
Yes.
I found this doubly interesting for a lot of reasons, but one of which was when I was at university in Winnipeg, and I don't know when it was, long time ago. There was one woman in the engineering faculty, and I often wondered how she survived to start with, and then secondly, I've often wondered what happened to her. I never, once you finished, you don't, well, I wasn't nowhere near the engineering faculty. So,
Do you remember her name?
nope, I can't, but I can remember what she looked like. She was
What
really
university was it?
university. Well, it was University of Manitoba, actually.
So it was University Man, and it was what year?
Actually, it was the okay. I was
I'll
at.
put you on the spot.
Oh yeah, you really did, because my brain only takes so much these days.
Right.
I was at one of the colleges, United Church College. What the heck was the name of it? You think I'd remember that, wouldn't you?
Because if I have the name of the university, so it's University of Manitoba, and roughly the year, I'll be able to find out who she was, and possibly find out what she.
Oh, okay. I'm going to guess at 1957 or 8.
Whoa. Okay.
I went. I'm not that old. I did go when I was very young. I was very fortunate in that I managed to get out of high school when I was pretty young. My father couldn't figure out what else to do with me, so that's where I had to go.
Okay, so it's University of Manitoba, and I can't remember whether I mentioned Norma Eddy in getting her degree in 1958 but she was the first one at Tons, and she unfortunately didn't really go into engineering. She married her lab partner, and but even though she didn't go into engineering, she has a street named after her on the campus because she was the first woman to actually get that degree. So they put a little street on the campus and named it the Norma Eddy Street. And they asked her husband for some information about her. And he said she was a great lab partner. So it was a little disappointing she didn't go into chemical engineering, someplace marvelous and wonderful. But the fact that he said that the fact that she got her engineering degree required a ridiculous amount of persistence, and he always admired that in her.
Never mind persistence. I'm sure there was a lot more than that.
Yes. I'm trying to find, Nancy, the name of the lady that belongs to North Toronto that was an engineering teacher. I feel horrible. I cannot remember her name.
There was Danny Bartlett, but she's not in North Toronto. She's
Dormer Ellis.
Dormer Ellis, yes.
Dr. Dormer Ellis. She was a teacher at Ryerson when it was Ryerson in Toronto. And she taught through pregnancy and everything. And she said she was marking papers in the maternity ward.
Oh my God. And she
She's
was
in her mid to late 90s right now.
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And she was a professor in engineering at Ryerson.
Yes, such an
Oh.
amazing woman to talk to.
Wow. I'm
Yeah.
going to look her up and just read about her. That's wonderful.
Yeah, yeah. Are there
Oh,
any other
Yeah,
comments?
Leigh, I thought I'd mention that BPW Niagara Falls, but we actually created a bursary. You know, the annual science and engineering fairs. I
Oh,
became familiar with that because my two boys were always in it right from the beginning, and they always won all kinds of awards. And so a year or so ago, I said to our club, I'd like to present a bursary for girls going into the STEM industry. And everybody agreed. We put $500 together, and we ended up going. They had us come as judges. And we
oh,
interviewed the older girls that were involved in the STEM industry. One was researching cancer cells. I don't know, Jocelyn, if you can remember, you or Anne can remember the other projects, but I remember the one with the cancer cells because she's the one that we eventually chose. And then we did a presentation at the awards night. And that was really cool to be part of that and support a girl in the STEM industry. We thought that was really great. So I think we'll be doing that every year.
oh, that is absolutely wonderful. And
Yes.
actually, if I had a link, or maybe I could just send it to you, I would be more than happy to make a small contribution.
Lovely. That
Mm.
would be wonderful. Yeah.
So just send me a link of however it would get there,
Mhm.
and I'd happily do that.
Great, great, good. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it was good to do that. Since I came from a generation where women had very little choice, and what I wanted to do was just said, no, you can't do that. So it's nice that the girls are being supported now to do to follow their dreams and their goals.
Oh,
I think
absolutely.
that's
And
awesome.
it's so recent. I mean, because what I remember, I was surprised that your organization was as old as it was and as it is, and because all of the engineering organizations for women are fairly new. So I just
Yeah.
thought that, maybe you started up 5 years ago or something.
Actually, BPW Niagara Falls is the oldest existing BPW club in the federation, the whole federation, because we started in 1917, we got our charter, but because there was no Canadian federation, we joined the American Federation. So once the Canadian one came up, we moved over into the Canadian Federation. We celebrated our 100th birthday in 2017.
Amazing. I
Mhm.
love that. So you're way before 1930.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You weren't members then, honest.
No,
Yes.
we were.
History of
Jocelyn, Ann,
why.
and I were not
I-
members at that time.
But the history of why it started must be fascinating. Has anybody written
Yes.
about it?
Yes,
Oh,
it was
yeah.
started in the United States because the government wanted women's information during World War I. It was 1919, I believe.
Mhm.
So if you go to BPW Canada website,
I get the
you
history.
will. They have a whole history on the website. It's so interesting.
Yeah. Do they have the history of your organization?
Well, it's BPW International, National, and then if you want BPW Ontario, then you go to our website.
Okay. But you're BPW Niagara, which is another.
Niagara Falls, so it's the municipality level.
Yeah, and
Yes.
the municipality level has been organized since 1917.
Mhm.
I'd like to know why. What was going on at that time.
That was they were meeting then at the YWCA. And
Didn't it have
actually,
something to do with the war measures and things like that
Mhm.
too?
yeah,
Probably.
they did some recycle business that they got an award for that. They also got an award for the and I found a plaque in the archives, and I gave it to Valerie and Ethel Clark from North Toronto BPW, and I was actually talking to them about it on Saturday, that it's been held there because it's going to be donated to the Women's History Museum in Ottawa.
Wonderful.
And it was a plaque awarded to BPW Niagara Falls by the Daughters of the. It was from England. What do you
Okay,
call it?
might have been IODE.
I don't know if it was
I
them.
forget what
I've got to look it up again to
No,
see.
we had nothing to do with IOD.
No,
No.
okay.
No.
I'm trying to remember. Daughters of the something.
Empire? No, that's
I think that Empire part was in there.
yeah.
I'll have to talk to Valerie
Okay.
again to get it because it's been about 5 years since I gave her that. Then COVID happened and everything. So, and also BPW Niagara Falls did a lot of fundraising, and they were able to raise enough money to buy an ambulance and had it sent to Britain while they were being bombed by the Germans.
Oh,
my gosh.
That was part of our award.
and is all that written somewhere?
Yeah, it is somewhere. I've got some different books.
Oh, good. Sounds like somebody's got to do a presentation.
I have boxes and boxes. That's just the thing. And our archives most of them have been sent. It's what's her name? Linda Davis has got our most the earliest archives. She's got them. I gave them to her in I think it was 2016. I gave them to her because I had no more space in my house. So, it gets to be, you got boxes, but I still have a box from BPW Fort Erie, which no
Fort
longer
Erie.
exists. I've still got a box of their stuff. And the woman who gave it to me, her mother, that was Leslie Harper. Ladies, you know her. We always had her in talking about Black History Month. And it was her mother who was the president at the time. So I have a little pin that she gave me from her mother, which was really nice. A little BPW pin with the long stem, and you just stuck it into your shirt. It's really
You know
neat.
what I'm seeing here is I'm seeing a PhD project for somebody in women's studies to do an action that would turn probably into a book. For the Niagara Fort Erie area, because the Niagara Peninsula area for women, because this is wonderful too. And who knew about all this? Nobody. Well, not nobody. I mean, you guys knew, but meanwhile, there's boxes going here, there, just like the Whitney thing, right? Boxes here, boxes there, and who knows where they are? And a PhD student wouldn't get their PhD until they dark on well found them, and open them. But that's not a bad, Brock University, whoever has a women's program to, if somebody picked that up as a PhD project, I thought it would be good. It'd be wonderful.
Nancy, you get on it, Nancy.
Well, as if I don't have enough.
That's right.
I happen to have a friend, Dr. Sharon Abbey, who was a professor of Brock. She's now retired, and she taught women's studies. And she invited me into a group, and we jokingly call it the senior sandbox. We're all seniors, but we all have a lot to say. And I know I hardly fit in that, but there's another woman who's also a retired professor of women's studies at Brock University. And she's actually, Sharon's going to speak. She spoke at our September 27th information night, and she's another one of my speakers in the speaker series. I'll let you know when she's going to be talking. And she talked about what my mother told me, about how her growth and the different things that happened. My mother never told me to expect this or that, and it was funny, was it not, Anne and Jocelyn? She was very good.
It was excellent. Yes.
Yeah, and she's written a book about women too. So, she's going to be a speaker. I'll let you know, and I think that's a great idea.
If they can find a student and concentrate on the Niagara area, because that's enough. I think there's enough in there, personally, from the sounds of it, because so much was going on. The Peace Bridge was being built. There was the hydro. I toured the one of the power plants the last time I was there.
Yeah,
There's so
yeah.
much going on, and it's a very active community. And if there's that women organizations, they must have really done a lot to contribute to all that. And we
Mhm.
hear about Tesla, and we hear about various other people,
Yeah,
Zowski.
hearing about the women.
Exactly. So
Mhm.
anyway, I throw that one out to you. Just don't throw it back at me. That's all I'm
Oh,
asking
dear.
you to do.
Oh dear. Okay, okay. Well,
Well, on that note, we're going to wrap it up.
Okay. Thank you.
Everybody check your chat notes. If you want to save the notes, there's a couple of links that Jocelyn sent out. The Brock University News for the STEM bursary, and the Dr. Sharon Abbey, looks like her information.
mhm.
So you can save that.
Ah,
But thank you so much. It was just an amazing evening. I'm very glad that we got to hear you and see those pictures. And again, Nancy, thank you so much for doing this. And I will see you all in November.
Yes.
right. And
Thank
thank you
you.
very much.
Thank
Yeah.
you. And thanks so much,
Amazing.
Leigh, for putting up with me, bugging you and everything.
Good night, ladies.
Okay,
Good night.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Good night.
Bye.